We all know that in order to be healthy, we need to exercise and eat a healthy diet. But there is an equally important part of a healthy life that often gets overlooked: our sleep. I've struggled with getting a good night's sleep for as long as I can remember. It often took me much longer than 30 minutes to fall asleep, and sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep. But I never really saw a big problem with that. I just saw it as an inconvenience that's kind of unavoidable. And I absolutely didn't see it as a health risk. It wasn't until recently that I really started looking into sleep, and what I learned completely changed my view on sleep. Good sleep is not a nice to have. It's absolutely essential for our physical health, but also for our mental health. Good sleep will help you improve your physical performance, your mental function. It will strengthen your immune system, reduce stress, reduce anxiety, regulate blood sugar levels, and much more. If we consistently don't get enough sleep, we can really have some major problems. Here's an excerpt from an article I found from Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Chronic poor sleep may increase the likelihood of developing dementia, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and even cancers of the breast, colon, ovaries, and prostate. Poor sleep can also affect the ability to function while performing daily tasks like working or driving. So you see that if we want to be healthy, sleep is really an important puzzle piece that should not be overlooked. And good sleep is not a coincidence. I always thought that some people just naturally sleep very well and others just have more problems with it. And there probably are some genetic factors that affect our sleep, but most sleep problems are avoidable and not predetermined. For the most part, their causes can be found in our lifestyles and our environments, and not in our genes. Nowadays, when we go to sleep and when we get up is mostly dictated by societal constructs and artificial influences. We get up when our alarm goes off and we have to go to work. We go to bed when it's a certain hour of the day or when we have finished our Netflix episode. But all these things that now set the rhythms of our day are relatively new and completely unnatural. Long before we had alarm clocks to wake us up and before we had artificial lights that allowed us to stay up late at night, our sleep schedule was determined for hundreds of thousands of years by our internal rhythm, our circadian rhythm, which in turn was influenced by various natural phenomena such as the sun rising and setting. The problem is that our modern lives are so disconnected from these natural signals that our circadian rhythm can't function properly anymore. And many common sleep problems are a direct result of this disconnect. If we want to fall asleep more easily and have better sleep, and if we want to feel awake and refreshed every morning, then we have to understand where our modern lives are not in alignment with our natural rhythms and realign them. One important factor that naturally sets our circadian rhythm is the rising and setting of the sun. When the sun sets and it gets darker, it sends a signal to our bodies that night is coming and we start to feel sleepy. And when the sun is rising in the morning, then our body notices that it's getting brighter outside and it sends a signal to us that the day is coming and we start to feel awake. Today we often artificially extend our days with artificial lights, and the time we have to get up at depends more on our work schedule than on the actual rising of the sun. This messes with our internal clock. To fix that, we need to consciously manage and use light exposure to align our circadian rhythm with our sleep schedule. Step 1. Reduce blue light exposure. First, we need to imitate the sunset. We often spend our entire evening in bright light. There are bright lights on, we look at a bright TV screen, and then when we brush our teeth, again, there are bright lights. So of course, when we then suddenly turn off the lights, our body is not in sleep mode yet. There wasn't this slow and gradual change in brightness that signals the coming of nightfall. One way to fix that would be to eliminate all artificial lighting and go live in a cabin in the woods, but to most of us that's probably not a practical solution. But we can also fix it by reducing our light exposure in the evening. So around 2 to 3 hours before going to bed, turn off all bright lamps. You still can have small dimmed lights or candles, just not these very bright lamps. Blue light is especially harmful for our circadian rhythm, so you want to have all your lights as dim and as warm, so as orange looking as possible. Screens also emanate blue light, so if possible, try to eliminate all screens 2 hours before going to bed, or alternatively, try to turn on a blue filter on your devices. A great inexpensive tool that can help you here are blue blocker glasses. Those are glasses with orange lenses that filter out a lot of the blue light, and that can be really helpful, especially if you often spend the evening in environments where you don't have full control over the light exposure. Step 2, keep your bedroom completely dark. Now, when you go to bed and sleep, you want your bedroom to be as dark as possible. Often our bedrooms are very bright even without having any lights on. There might be street lights outside that are shining through the window, or you might have some appliances in your bedroom, which have standby lights that give off light. These things might not seem like they're such big of a deal, but it can affect our sleep quality. There are a few things that you can do here. You can use blackout blinds to keep out the light from outside, and you can also unplug all devices or use some light blocking tape to tape over the standby lights. And finally, you can wear a sleeping mask. Once you have light-proofed your room, you will really be shocked by how big the contrast is between the light-proofed room and the room before light-proofing it. Step 3, get bright light exposure in the morning. In the evening, we try to reduce light exposure, and in the morning, we want to do the exact opposite. The sunrise is nature's signal to us that the day is there and it's time to wake up. But many of us spend our entire days inside, so we are sealed off from the sun's bright light. Of course, it gets brighter inside as well when the sun is getting up, but not nearly as bright as outside. And that's where naturally we would spend most of our day. It's only very recently, evolutionary speaking, that we spend so much time indoors. Our ancestors' huts and cabins and wigwams and the like were mostly a shelter for the night and not a room to spend their entire lives in. So if we want to get that bright light exposure, we need to go outside. Ideally for at least 10 minutes within the first hour of waking up. What I do is directly after getting up, I go for a short walk, just 15-20 minutes. And when the sun is out, I try to look at the sun. I don't look into the sun, but like towards it. You could also sit on a porch or a balcony and look towards the sun, but I like going for a walk because then I get some movement at the same time. If you have to get up before the sun is out, then you can also use a daylight lamp in the morning. And then throughout the day, just try to get as much daylight as you can. Because remember, our ancestors evolved living outside all day. So that's what our bodies expect. So use every opportunity you get to get outside. Eat your lunch outside, go for a run in the park instead of going to the gym, whatever you can do. Step 4, get up at the same time every day. Back when our sleep rhythms were aligned with nature's rhythms, that meant that they were very consistent. Of course, there is a slow shift in the rhythm of the sun throughout the year, but that's a very slow and gradual shift, and day to day it's actually very consistent. And that's very different in our modern lives. A lot of people have to get up very early throughout the week to go to work, but then on the weekends they sleep in. And if you, for example, have to get up at 6 a.m. in the week and then sleep until 10 a.m. on the weekend, that's a 4-hour difference. That's basically like being jet lagged from a small long distance flight every single week. One of the best things that you can do for your sleep is to get up at the same time every day, including the weekends. And no snooze button. When the alarm goes off in the morning, just get up, have a glass of water and go for a short walk. I'm the first one to admit that this does take some time getting used to, but once you stick to the schedule for a few weeks, you will notice your sleep quality improving dramatically, and then you will definitely not want to go back to sleeping in on weekends. I've suffered from sleep onset insomnia for basically my entire life, and this is the one thing that really made all the difference for me. Step 5, understand your sleep cycles. One thing that is helpful to keep in mind is that we usually sleep in 90-minute cycles. In each cycle, we go through different sleep phases from REM sleep to deep sleep, and we don't want to wake up in the middle of a cycle. And that's why we should sleep in multiples of 90 minutes. So you should sleep 7.5 hours or 9 hours, but nothing in between. Of course, this isn't necessarily exactly true for everybody. Not everyone's sleep cycles are exactly 90 minutes. So you will have to do some experimenting, whether you feel better after 7.5 hours of sleep or 7 hours and 40 minutes or 50 minutes. So just try what works for you and what you see is working for your body. But when you see that something is working, then stick to it. For the same reason, we also want to keep our naps shorter than 26 minutes. So have a power nap instead of just falling asleep throughout the day. And that will help us to avoid starting like a full new sleep cycle that would then get interrupted. Step 6, exercise, but not in the evening. Apart from the things that you do directly before and after sleeping, one of the best things you can do to improve your sleep quality is exercising. There is a lot of evidence that exercise helps you not only to fall asleep faster, but also to have a better quality of sleep. But what kind of exercise should we do and how often? It seems that basically any exercise will be helpful, but especially doing 30 minutes of aerobic exercises every day will get us the best benefits. But timing is important here. From what I know, the research isn't clear if there is any time of the day that's ideal for exercise in terms of sleep. But we do know that sleep raises the body core temperature, and if we have a raised core temperature, that will make it harder to fall asleep, and it's a signal for our body that we're still being active. So we should try to avoid exercising in the last 2 or 3 hours before going to bed. And this leads us to our final point. Step 7, manage your body temperature. Interestingly, our body temperature is a signal for our body that sets our circadian rhythm. High core temperatures are associated with wakefulness, which makes sense because it usually is warmer throughout the day than at night. And also throughout the day we do things that raise our body temperature, such as moving around and eating. And of course, conversely, a low core temperature is associated with sleep. After all, it usually cools down in the evening, and then we also stop eating and moving and we sleep. And this makes our body temperature drop a little bit. In modern houses and apartments, we are usually cut off from the natural drop in temperature that occurs outside, but we can still avoid raising our body temperature additionally. And that especially means no more eating and exercising around 2 hours before going to bed. If you have the option, it can also be helpful to keep the room temperature of your bedroom a little bit lower than the rest of your house. And again, in the morning, we want to do the exact opposite. So after waking up, we want to move around, we want to eat, we want to raise our core temperature, because that tells our body that the day has started and that we are supposed to feel wakeful now. In that way, we can intentionally give our body the signal that it needs to set the circadian rhythm naturally. Depending on your current lifestyle, these might be pretty significant big changes, but you don't have to do everything all at once. So just take it one step at a time. When I started to work on my sleep, I didn't go all in. I just did one thing. I tried to dim the lights in the evening, and then after a while I got some blue blocker glasses, and after a while I tried to get up at the same time every day. And so little by little I made some slow but very significant improvements to my sleep. If you struggle with falling asleep in the evening, or you often feel tired in the morning, then I highly recommend you try these things. Those are all techniques that work with nature and with our physiology, not against it. So they are accessible to everybody, and anyone can just try them out and see if they work for you. Before we wrap up, let's recap the most important things that you can do for your sleep. Limit light exposure in the evening. Dim your lights, avoid screens, use blue blockers. Keep your bedroom completely dark. Get bright light exposure right after waking up. Stick to a sleep schedule without exceptions and don't snooze. Sleep in multiples of 90 minutes. Exercise every day. Stay cool in the evening and night. Get warm in the morning. I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope that you will soon see improvements in your sleep quality. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. Like this video if you enjoyed it and found it helpful, and I will see you if you want in my next video.